I'm here in New York City in wonderful Union Square, and I'm going to start asking people some questions.
My name's Alex Naris. I live in Georgetown in Washington, D.C. It's northwest.
Earl, I'm native New Yorker,
What do you do for a living?
social worker.
Right now, I'm temping for the Department of Justice. I recently withdrew from law school, but I'm still very interested in the legal matters of the United States, and Washington, D.C. is a really good place to work for that. So,
Are you originally from there?
I grew up in Maryland, right on the border of D.C. Yeah.
If you don't mind me asking, who did you vote for in the last election?
Obama.
And how come?
I think the country needed a change. I think we needed a strong leader. He has the visions of like John Kennedy. I think some of the issues on poverty and homelessness, I think he'll be able to address. Housing in New York City is a big issue, especially affordable housing that the Democrats also have neglected in the past. And I think he'll do a very good job. I think it's going to be very hard for him in the first few months, but I think he has a vision that we haven't seen in a while.
What does Barack Obama's presidency mean to you?
I think it's a huge change. I think in terms of just a public outcry, it made a huge difference. Obviously, he's the first considered black president of the United States. In terms of the racial relations that the United States have gone through to get to that point, it's very impressive. I think he's a very down-to-earth man. He's a public speaker. He eats at my favorite place, Ben's Chili Bowl. Like he's a great guy in so many ways.
Can you define the role of a president for me in your term?
I think the role of a president is basically a person who would represent the people, just not corporations, not just big banks, but what the people say. I think that's what made Franklin Roosevelt so successful and John Kennedy, because they had the vision of what people said, not corporations said, and you don't have that anymore, unfortunately. You know, people like Mario Cuomo, who was the best governor I think New York State ever had, he stood in what he believed in. He was against the death penalty. He was very pro-tenants. We never had housing problems under the Cuomo administration. And I see this with Obama.
Public education is huge to me. Right now, the D.C. public schools they're having a really hard time. Recently, the Chancellor of Education fired about 30 of the principals of the schools. DC also has one of the highest rates of charter schools. It's definitely a work in progress, more of an experimentation, but there are about 60 charter schools in DC. Brahma is very heavy into renovating the public education for DC, and I think that he can actually make a lot of positive changes for that.
What are you most afraid of in the next 4 years?
Well, I feel a sense of hope with Obama being in office, but I think people are going to want too much out of him the first few months, which is unfair because we've had 8 years of damage under the Bush administration.
There's a lot of question about whether or not he's going to be a good president, and I think that because there is so much resistance, there will be a lot of roadblocks for him to jump over. I think a lot of people would want to see him fail.
You know, I wish the war would end, and I'm sure that with Hillary being Secretary of State and Obama president, I think there'll be peace. Hopefully there'll be peace in the Middle East.
And if you could say one thing to him, what would it be?
Thank you.
We need affordable housing, and we need definitely some type of universal health care.